Shall I start?
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon from Japan. This is 1:40 afternoon in Japan. I don't know what the time in your local time. My name is Atsushi Tajima, and I'm talking about historical development of agricultural universities in Japan. But as I mentioned here, I wrote here, my specialty is animal productions, and particularly avian reproductions. I call myself chickenologist. But there is some reason that I was assigned to work on this area when I came here, and I've been doing some surveys and research and wrote several articles on the historical development of agricultural universities in Japan. And I think it is a good opportunity for myself and also probably for you to share what happened in the past 100 years in Japan as far as the development of the agricultural universities in Japan. And probably I'd like to share with you the very big challenge that we're going to face in the near future. So I'm going to explain about the historical background of the agricultural universities and current status, and at the end some of the future prospects. So Dr. Nagai Michio, he's already passed away, but he is one of the best-known education specialists, and he once been a minister of education, and he is very well-known philosopher, education philosopher. And he wrote back in 1965. He wrote a book called Universities in Japan, and this is a category followed by Dr. Michio Nagai. And these are my additions. Okay? So up to here, the first period, second period, third period, a category by Dr. Michio Nagai. And so I start with the first period. So first period start with 1868 until 1918. And those who are familiar with Japanese history, this number is very familiar. And this year is a year of so-called Meiji Restoration. Meiji Restorations. And this is a big, in a sense, it's a very big revolution that changed from very old traditional style to Westernization really started this year. And there's so many things happen before and after this big revolutions. And 1918 means sometime close to the World War I. Okay? Second period is World War I until the end of the Second World War. And third one is 1945, that means after Second World War, until 1991. And this year is, he wrote 65, he wrote this book at 65. But this is my definition that the framework of the university that started in 1945 extended until 1991. And in 1991, there is another big change of the framework of the Japanese university as a whole. And until 2004. And 2004, there is another big reform of the university called university corporations of the national universities. And this, and it's continuing now, and we have a big struggles going on right now. Big struggles after National University Corporation started in 2004, and after 16, 17 years, now we have a lot of problems, facing a lot of problem. So up to here, there's a definition of Dr. Nagai, and after that, this is my definition. And let's go just briefly back to the Japanese history of starting from 1639, and this is a time of the old system of the so-called Han system. Han means unit. You know, that's a very much independent society in Japan. And Tokugawa government, that's the shogun government, he was the strongest one among more than 200 small Han. And if you come to Japan, you see a lot of small castles all over, several hundred of them. And each of the territory has so-called the lord, and then it was the territory was under the control of this small Han. And Tokugawa was the biggest one. And so feudal lord. And this continued more than 200 years. And then 1953 was a big movement. That was Commodore Matthew Perry from the United States came with the big steam locomotive, the ship. And that was a big surprise to the Japanese people to wake up from the old system. And next year, Japan had opened the country to the other countries. And this is the start of the big revolution. And as I mentioned before, 1968, the very major change of the government was, this is the restoration is actually the revolutions took place in 1968. And all the modernization started here. And that has a big influence on the education system as a whole in Japan. So what happened in this Meiji Restoration was a return of the political power from the shogun to Imperial court. And then the National Congress was established after that. And so the democracy started from this after the Meiji Restoration in 1868. So this is a brief background of what happened after 1868. And what I'm going to talk from now is primarily what's happened after these Meiji restorations. So during this, before the Meiji Restoration, this is a map of the so-called Han in Chinese character. There are more than feudal units spread over the country. And the size of the dot is corresponding with the size of the amount of rice yield. So until this time, during this period, the size of or power of each Han was measured by the amount of rice yield. So Tokugawa was the biggest, so that they had the control over other Han. And you see lots of Hans all over the country, so that each Han has a small castles and small lord. And after the Meiji Restoration, this was reorganized into 46 units, so-called prefecture, ken. So we are talking about 46 ken by reorganizing these small Han. And so often in the within Ken, the current Ken, there is the nature or the habit of the people very much different because they had the different, they belong to different Han in the old days. So like southern area, the particular Han, particular Ken, and the northern area, sometimes very much different in the humans, for the habits or sometimes the accent they speak. Sometimes there is so much variation among Ken. The reason is it used to be different Han. So now this is the geography of Japan, and now we have 4 islands, main island and Okinawa, and used to be Ryukyu had once been an imperial, the independent empire, but there was very strong influence of Kagoshima. That's under Kagoshima in Kyushu. And this is going to be a very important issue, important things in the future talk. So anyway, Honshu is a big major island, Shikoku is here, and Kyushu here, and Hokkaido was one of the new Japanese territories. And as you see, Kyushu is very, very close from South Korea, so that Kyushu has a very close connection with Korea. So I'm talking about the establishment of the agricultural universities in Japan. And first half, I'm going to focus on 2 very famous agricultural schools. The first one is Sapporo Agricultural College, and currently this is Faculty of Agriculture, Hokkaido University in Sapporo, Hokkaido. Okay? And the second one, 2 years later, Komama Agricultural College was established, and now currently as a Tokyo University Faculty of Agriculture. So these 2 agricultural schools really was the starting point of the higher agricultural education in Japan. So, and talking about, I'm start talking about from the Hokkaido, the Sapporo Agricultural College, currently Hokkaido University College of Agriculture. Now, that time, at the beginning of the Meiji period, after 1968, actually the territory of the Japanese territory was limited to the southern Hokkaido. And rest of the Hokkaido, the border was not really fixed at the time. That was very, very much important issue. So rest of the Hokkaido, from the international law standpoint of view, the border was not being fixed yet. The Japanese territory was limited to Hakodate, with the southern end of Hokkaido. And by recognizing the importance of the Hokkaido, Meiji government, new government, founded an agent called the government unit called Hokkaido Development Commission. It's Hokkaido Kaitakushi. It's in Japanese Hokkaido Development Commission, and led by Kuroda Kiyotaka. He later became prime minister. So he has a very good he is a very good leader, and he became director of the Hokkaido Development Commission. Why my name is here? I should erase it. I should erase it. This is wrong. Nothing to do with me. Okay, sorry. Now, what I would like to stress is his ability to foresee the goal I am still studying the background, his philosophical background, but somehow, he thought that development or explorations of Hokkaido should follow the model of the United States development. He set the goal, and so usually in the past, we had a very strong influence of Europe rather than the United States. But somehow, he thought that development of Hokkaido should be modeled after United States. And he started with deputy director of the commission and became director in 1 year later, and he later became prime minister. Okay? So his foreseeing ability is just exceptional. Okay? So, and the importance of Hokkaido was that time, at the end of the 19th century, okay, the Russian threat was very severe. The Russia was started to explore toward the east, and they have the navy base at the Vladivostok. Okay, and they wanted to go to Pacific Ocean, but they should pass through either one of the three channels. Japan is just a ceiling, putting a cap on top of Vladivostok. And then the Russian fleet had to pass either one of the three pathways. So that they went come from the south to the Sakhalin, and then they would like to occupy Hokkaido so that we will have a harbor that facing the Pacific Ocean. And that was a major threat in Hokkaido. And that's why Meiji government hurried to develop Hokkaido. That was one of the biggest reasons, strategical reasons. So that, and another key person was Moriarima. And he is probably one of the key persons as far as the education system establishment of the current education system is concerned. Let me explain his background. He was born and grew up in Kagoshima, Kyushu. Okay? Born and grew up in Kyushu. And when he was a teenager, he had a very strong, there was a war or fight between UK and damaged, because the cannon that the Kagoshima sent never reached the warship, but the cannon, the bullet from the warship reached to their territory. And they were so proud of being Bushi, and they thought they are the strongest. But military power, but he has to recognize that the military power was very clearly inferior to UK, British Navy. And what that was the interesting thing is, after the loss against the British Navy, he thought development of the strong Navy is a key for the national development. And he thought, why not go to United Kingdom to learn how to build a strong ship? And he went by smuggling, because this is not allowed this time, because before the Meiji Restoration. And he met with Mr. Lawrence Oliphant. And he is a very philosophical person, and he has a very good grasp of the historical, of the military knowledge. And he advised, okay, UK military, the new world, there is a new world, United States. Okay, they are going to be the next power. So why don't you go to study under Thomas Harris of the United States? And this person is another very interesting person. That's very conservative Christianity. The group, the Sweden Boys, they are like working and studying at the same time. So under the influence, under the introductions of Mr. Lawrence in UK, he went to study under Thomas Harris and stayed there for about 2 years. And this time, this is a key time later on that what happened in the United States was the development of the land-grant university law was passed the Congress, like before this time. So he did thorough survey about the European education system, not just UK, but all the European system, and also this time when he was under Mr. Thomas Harris was the period when land-grant institutions was developed. And he thoroughly studied the education system in both Europe and United States, and how to integrate those education system into modified to the Japanese system. His thought is always thinking about how to incorporate the Western system into Japanese system. And he became, in French, chargé d'affaires. That's I think it's number 2 position in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I cannot pronounce plenipotentiary. Is that correct? Plenipotentiary minister at DC. And this is another key time. Okay, key time that because he met with President Grant. He was a general during the time of the Civil War. He was a president, okay? And introduced Kuroda to President Grant this time. So he connected. Okay, I explain later on. And after coming back to Japan, and after studying about the United States and comparing comparative study on the education system between US and Europe, the United States, the system in the United States was a little bit more flexible, and positions of the vocational education was very clear. And after coming back to Japan, he's invested his own private fund to establish commercial school, business schools. Now it's become Hitotsubashi University. So Hitotsubashi University was started with his personal investment. And again, he went back to UK as a plenipotentiary minister. And then he was appointed as first Minister of Education in 1885. And after his appointment to the Minister of Education, within few months, he wrote 4 principal laws about education. One is Imperial University Order. Second one is Normal School Order. Third one is Primary School Order. And fourth one, the Secondary School Order. He wrote all this, he made up all the framework by himself within just a few months. So this is really reflecting his learning and philosophy that he absorbed during this period. Okay. Minister of Education under Ito Hirofumi administration. When Ito Hirofumi became Prime Minister, he appointed Mr. Moriarty as Minister of Education. And this framework it's still the big frame, in a sense, this big framework is still ongoing in one sense. So, and then he recognized the importance of vocational education. So himself established business schools, and he promoted to establish the technical schools. So he supported to develop the technical schools, and now become Tokyo Kogyo Daigaku, Tokyo University of Engineering. That's one of the best engineering schools. And so he has another, together with Kuroda and Mori, he has a very foreseeing ability to construct a social structure, social, how do you say, okay. And when he was, Mori Arinori was in the United States, as I think that right after the Second World War, during the Second World War, there are three very important law was passed the Congress. And this is 1962. Justin Morrill, the Congressman Justin Morrill sent a bill to the Congress to establish our so-called land-grant university. Land grant means the federal government owns the land in each state. Then the federal government allocated 30,000 acres, which is equivalent 121 hectares per number of congressmen and senator. So if there are 2 congressmen and 1 senator, that means 3 times, triple. That's a tremendous amount of a large area. And using this as asset, then each university, each state construct a university focused on agriculture, engineering, and military science. So the land grant school is starting point. There's so many different type of land grant school currently, but this is the original type of the land grant school. The university is usually have very big College of Agriculture, very big College of Engineering, and military science. That's the basic unit. And basically, the land grant university was founded. One land grant school was established in each state. I happened to study in one of them, University of Minnesota. And when I was a graduate student at the University of Minnesota, I often heard from the faculty member what is a mission of land grant. And that time, I didn't understand what the meaning, but the mission of the basic philosophy is still alive, and the land grant university has a mission to support and serve for the people in the state. After 15 years later, there is a Hatch Act. There's a Senator Hatch, and then agricultural experimental station was founded at each land grant university. So in order to improve the agricultural technology, there has to be a station, testing station, so that Hatch Act was passed the Congress, and then each land grant school established agricultural experimental stations. And in 1914, now Smith-Lever Act was passed the Congress. And then finally, the cooperative extension system was started. And I won't explain about this, but this is, I think, one of the best systems in the world that integrate federal government and local government and the university working together for the people of within the state, resident of the state. So this is basically, this is the model that I've learned at Utah State University, with one of the affiliated university of my university. And cooperative extension system as like federal government, and in case of agriculture, it's USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, and State Department of Agriculture, and Agriculture Experimental Station of the Land-Grant University, working together for the resident of the state. And so this is cooperative extension system, as the three of them are working together. And the salary of the faculty under the working for the cooperative extension system, I've learned that more or less the 80% of the salary of the cooperative extension system is supported by the state, 20% from USDA. And probably this proportion vary among to state. And also, usually there is like several 30, 40, 50 so-called county within the state. And land-grant university usually allocate at least one extension agent in each county within the state. And like if the area is corn oriented, then they allocate the specialist in corn production. If it is like the dairy cattle, then dairy specialist is located. And even in the city area, there is a poverty problem, or sometimes a divorce problem was very serious. So there is an extension system that working on the family problems. So the extension system is very dynamic and then needs oriented. Whatever there is a problem and the resident of the people have a problem, then they take up and coming back to the schools and then organize a team to find out the solution. Now, talking about going back to Japan, after the Meiji Restoration, the government really surprised how we are technologically behind in many respects. And in 1971 to 1973, 1 year and 9 months, half of the cabinet member went out to the country to study what's going on in the world and called Iwakura mission. And this really changed the mind of the government. And this is Iwakura Tomi, and he's a descendant of the feudal famous family. And there's a lot of people, and Ito Hirofumi will be later on the prime minister and appointed Moriarty as the first minister of education. So half of the cabinet member went out of the country, and starting from San Francisco, and they went to Chicago and DC, and went to Europe, and then India, China, and came back to Japan after 9 months. And Iwakura Mission, there is a series of 8 books. It's a huge book. There is a memoir. There is and it's so interesting that how they surprised when they arrived in San Francisco. They saw a big building and hotels. That was the first surprise. And there is a transatlantic and transcontinent train was just passed through. So they took a train from San Francisco through Nevada to Chicago and all the way through the DC. And so they had so many interaction between the people in many parts of the United States. And on the way back from Europe, this is really made a Japanese government motivated to work, because when they went to India and China and Japan, and they've learned that there is a opium war. So the opium was produced in India and transported to and sold in China. And there is a lot of big addict in China. And there's a war, and so and we learned that, okay, the biggest threat or fear against becoming a colony of the Western country. So that was the biggest motivation for later on. So a strengthening of the industry was necessary, and also strengthening of the military in two ways. One is hardware, so that warships or the cannons or the hardware. And another thing was the physical ability of the soldiers. That's why agriculture university was very big, very important, because at the end of the the Edo period, before the Meiji Restoration, the average height of the Japanese man was 155, very small. And after learning the Western medicine, the lack of the animal protein was a limiting factor. That was really his essentials. You know, the lack, the shortage of the new protein, the protein intake was limiting the development of the body. So that's why the animal production, that my animal production was promoted in the Meiji government. From my sense, I'm an animal scientist. From my sense, Japanese government really conducted the breeding program to improve the physical ability by changing the environment to allow to express the genetic ability, to maximize the genetic ability. So the limiting factor as a problem. Okay? So, and also this time increase of the population was mandatory. So the Meiji government promoted the people to have more baby. That's why, and end of the Edo period, the population of Japan was 32 million. 32 million. Now they promoted to have the more baby, and now we have 127 million. Am I right? Am I right? 127 million. That is outcome of the. This is outcome of the policy of the Meiji government. And let me summarize what's happened here. Is Moriari Nori and Kuroda Kiyotaka. Actually, they are both from Satsuma, Kaoshima, Soju. Okay? And he decided to develop Hokkaido with US model, US development model. And he asked Moriari Nori, who was in the state as under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so that Moriari Nori made a contact to the US government and introduced Kuroda Kiyotaka to General Grant, who
we can hear you.
Who was the president. Ulysses Grant was hero of the Civil War, and he was a president at that time. So Moriari Nori connected Kuroda Kiyotaka to Grant, and Kuroda requested through Moriari Nori to introduce appropriate person who can design the exploration of Hokkaido. And President Ulysses Grant recommended Mr. Horace Kepler. He's a commissioner, or like I think one of the top executives of USDA. And he took the offer, and he resigned USDA and came to Hokkaido. That was amazing. That was amazing. And under his, I will explain a little bit about Horace Kepler later on, but under his advice, one of his advice was establishment of the agriculture the schools in Hokkaido. It's essential for the development. And he recommended Mr. William Clark. That time he was the president of the Massachusetts Agricultural College. And Mr. William Clark took the offer from Mr. Horace Capron, and he was an active president of the Massachusetts Agricultural College. He took 1 year leave of absence. At that time, it takes about 1 month and a half to cross the US continent and to come to Japan. So he stayed in Sapporo only for 9 months. But what he has done is he took his best student with him, several of them, with him to Hokkaido. So after his returning back to United States and continue the position as the president of the Massachusetts Agricultural College, his student really worked to develop the education program at Sapporo Agricultural College. And the Hokkaido development was really advanced with initiated by Dr. Clark and then with his student. And this is his Horace Capron wrote a memoir of Horace Capron, and by the way, I have a copy of this. This is from Hokkaido University Library, and there is whole his thought and what he's done, all the things. There are 2 volumes, and so the memoir of Horace Capron has been published, and this is very, very interesting book. And this is the supervision of Mr. Horace Capron. He advised to import seed from many different varieties, from fruits, vegetables, and crops, and check which is the best suitable in Hokkaido conditions. And he introduced livestock, including this is the breed of the cattle, Devon or Durham cattle, and so tested, and also established experimental farms, and conducted a land survey on the mineral deposit, and founded fish cannery. And this is very interesting. This is because that time the rice production was very difficult in Hokkaido due to the low temperature. He recommended to produce wheat and rice, and then this which led to the establishment of Sapporo beer. Many people familiar with Sapporo beer, right? This is one of the famous brands in Japan. But this is the Sapporo beer was started with the recommendation of Horace Capron. And also, at last, he recommended to construct agricultural schools, and this later became Hokkaido University College of Agriculture. So, before establishing a school in Hokkaido, the government established a preparatory schools, or temporary school, very close to Tokyo Tower, Zojoji, the temple, Zojoji Buddhist temple. And there is a small stone here, and this is all it remains is there was a temporary schools were there. This is now park, and we've been there about 10 years ago. So temporary schools of the Kaitakushi, that's an exploration, was established in 1972, and also that time probably this is going to be an ethical issue, as Kaitakushi school for women's school. And because this is very, this time, this is historical. Kaitakushi Gakko, this the main school was boys' schools. And if they were sent to Hokkaido, they need bride. So that the government established women's school to become a wife of the boys. And also, this is another thing that has been major issues of the racial issues, that they took the native Hokkaido people to educate in Tokyo. So they establish, at the same time, they established a school for Ainu, which is a native Hokkaido people, and they try to convert them into Japanese culture. And then the law of the minority was valid until 1990s. 1990s. So finally it was abandoned. So this is the starting point was in Tokyo, and this is the farm that they developed in Hokkaido. So, and Dr. William Clark was the active president of the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and when he left Hokkaido, he left a very famous word: "Boys, be ambitious like this old man." And this is usually a very, everybody knows probably this part, but this is actually the full frame. And he was officially first vice president of the Hokkaido Agricultural College, but in actual meaning, actual sense, he designed everything. So Sapporo Agricultural College was modeled after land-grant institutions, taking the American exploration model adopted into Hokkaido. Now, at that time, after the Meiji Restoration, there are 4 major issues that Meiji government, new government, have to deal with. One is bushi, the samurai positions. Okay? There were 4 social rank during the Edo period: bushi, farmer, manufacturers, and merchant, in this order. And after the Meiji Restorations, this social rank was abandoned. Okay? Now, and there are so many bushi that time, and they are very proud of themselves, but for the more than 200 years, there was no war in Japan. So it was very, very superficial. But they do not really have ability to create something, but more of the bureaucrat type of thing. So one of the things that the government have to concern is how to let them live by themselves. So they train commercials or manufacturing of farming. They put to so many different areas. And one of the way is to send them to Hokkaido as an exploration army. Just taking, they regard it as a bushi descendant, so they made the pride, but they are sent to Hokkaido for exploration. And I'm from Hokkaido, and my area also was a lot of this bushi descendant was immigrated in Hokkaido for exploration. So, another thing is for strong military. So every man has to be a soldier. That's another movement. And again, Kuroda Kiyotaka. So in 1954, there's a peace and amity treaty between Russia and there is the border between Russia has been settled here. Now, the Hokkaido used to be called Ezo, but now called it Hokkaido. They renamed it, and the Hokkaido Development Commission was founded. And then large-scale agriculture in USA was modeled after USA and adopted into Hokkaido, and then they asked to design to Horace Kepler. And Sapporo Agricultural Schools was taught in English. The lecture was in English. And they started with general education, like philosophy, and including Bible study. And that was a very big struggle for the Japanese government. This is national schools, but Horace Kepron and Mr. Clark, Dr. Clark, insisted that without Christianity thought, they cannot educate. And there is a big fight between Kuroda and Horace Kepron on the way to Hokkaido. But they insisted that without the Christianity thought, they cannot make education, so that there was a very strong influence of Christianity in the Hokkaido and the Sapporo Agricultural schools. And these people are very famous later on. Nitobe Inazo, Uchimura Kanzo, Nijima Jo. And they are second year graduate, second batch. So that they are not really taught directly by Dr. Clark, but through his student. And later on, he became founding deputy director of the League of Nations. I think he is one of the most intelligent person in the world, Japanese history. And when he was in the United States, okay, what is a basic, fundamental, mental standard of the Japanese people, equivalent to Bible in the Western society? And he thought it's a Bushido. And he is a very good command of language. So he wrote this book in English, and he published in the United States. And most of the intellectuals, the keyword of the intellectuals among the American people was, have you read Bushido? Was once been a keyword. And it has been later on translated in Japanese. And Uchimura Kanzo, he's becoming a Christian. His wife is from Pennsylvania, Friends. So he became a friend. Kanzo Uchimura he wrote a book, How I Became a Christian. So he's one of the big philosophers. And Nijima Jo, he's a founder of the Doshisha University in Kyoto. So these are all people are graduates of Sapporo Agricultural Schools. But probably their ability was beyond Hokkaido, probably. They thought more widely. And Nitobe Inazo, deputy director of the League of Nations, and he said that I wish, when he was tenure at the deputy director of the League of Nations, this is his famous word, I wish to be a bridge over Pacific Ocean. So he is so big in mind. And in 1984, it's changed already, but his face showed up in 5,000 yen bill. And now changing topic to the Komaba Agricultural Schools. 1974, there is a preparatory school for agriculture in Shinjuku, Tokyo. And it became agricultural schools and farm. And in 1882, Komaba Agricultural Schools was established. And first, they invited a British teacher. But British teacher taught British large-scale farming to the Japanese student, which was not very suitable. So that after the contract with the British teacher was over, then they switched to German teacher. And then German-style small-scale farming was adopted in the Komaba Agricultural Schools. And now Tokyo University general education system in Komaba, there is a small monument called Komaba Agriculture Monument. Used to be that part, Tokyo University general education area was once that place was the Komaba Agricultural Schools was located. So, now history of the Komaba Agricultural School. There are more government, more of the support agriculture. The purpose is for the establishment, the exploration of Hokkaido. But Komaba Agricultural Schools was more government-oriented for improving the agriculture in Honshu area. And Tokyo Agriculture, there is attached the side schools, sub-school was established. Tokyo Agriculture and Forestry College and Tokyo Imperial University and Tokyo University. But there are affiliated schools, two affiliated schools was established. One is College of Agriculture, Category 2, and one is Agriculture Teacher Training School. And this is currently Tokyo Nonko Daigaku, Tokyo University of Agriculture and Engineering. And this university, this school, is currently University of Tsukuba, College of Agro-Bioresources, that I'm affiliated in. So, and famous teacher that Komaba Agricultural Schools recruited was Oscar Kellner. He is a German agricultural chemist. He is a graduate of the Leipzig University, and he did a lot of soil chemistry, and he established a paddy field, and still there at the Komaba. It's called Kellner's Paddy. It's very close from the Komaba station of Inokashira-sen. There is a paddy field, and they've tested the fertilizer suitable for the particular area. And then after the testing, he submitted the outcome to the German scientific paper, so that the student was very much motivated. So it's called the Kellner standard for the paddy field was established, and that was transmitted to the neighboring area. And the graduate used that knowledge to improve the paddy rice production in the respective area. And starting from, this is the history of Imperial University now. So, as I mentioned, the Imperial University law was adopted by Moriari Nori, and first university, Imperial University, was Tokyo University. And this university was like merging so many different schools, pre-existing schools, and become one system. And in 1890, Komaba Agricultural Schools was incorporated to Tokyo Imperial University system. Now, second Imperial University was Kyoto University. And see the order, with the 1897, science and engineering was the first. Second was law and medicine, humanity and agriculture. The third one is Tohoku Imperial University, but this is a very strange thing, but Sapporo Agricultural School always wanted to become an imperial school, Imperial University, but College of Agriculture alone was not allowed to become an imperial school, so that the location was Sapporo, but Tohoku Imperial University was established in Sendai, but College of Agriculture remained in Sapporo. This is very confusing. But name was Tohoku University College of Agriculture, located in Sapporo. That's happened. And science, medicine, agriculture was established later on. So again, after the establishment of Hokkaido University, the College of Agriculture of Tohoku University was again established after the Second World War. Now, we have the Japanese government set up 9 imperial universities. The rest of them, Kyushu Imperial Universities. Now, Kyushu University started from medicine and engineering. But actually, this medicine was branch of the Kyoto University clinic. Started with the Kyushu University Medical Schools was started through branch of the Kyoto University Hospital in Fukuoka. And now, in 1918, Hokkaido Imperial University was founded together with medicine. After medical schools and agricultural schools together become Hokkaido University, Hokkaido Imperial University. In 1924, Keijo Imperial University was established in Seoul. This time the Korea was under Japanese government. And so was Taipei. Taipei Imperial University was founded. And this is social, law and humanities science, engineering, medicine, and humanity science and agriculture. And lastly, Osaka University and Nagoya University was founded in 1990. And as you see, among 9 imperial universities, 7 universities, except Keijo and Osaka, has College of Agriculture. And also, every one of them, most of them have medical schools and engineering. That shows the role of the imperial university is promotion of the industry and hygiene and food production. That was, and then it's located throughout the country. So that in a sense, I have an assumption that the distribution of the imperial universities, just like land grant schools, based on the necessity of the area. Industrial promotions and medical development, agricultural development, industry development. Those are the main functions of the imperial universities. So Imperial University in Japan at 19th century founded achieved national goal to avoid colonization by Western countries. Emphasis was science, engineering, medicine, and agriculture. And another thing, very different from the Western university, no College of Divinity. Usually, major schools in Europe and the United States, like Ivy schools, most of them start with schools of divinity, but none of them, no divinity. So, and after First World War, after this establishment of the major imperial schools, then it's the second stage is to expansion of the knowledge and the secondary or tertiary level, so that technical schools was founded. So the college order in 1903 was founded and started. The horse was a very important power for the war or for the draft purpose. So that veterinary schools was established, 15 of them. So these are starting from Morioka and Kagoshima. And now currently, Iwate Daigaku vet schools and Kagoshima Daigaku vet schools. They are the two early vet schools. And Ueda Sericulture and Kyoto Higher Sericulture and Tokyo Higher Sericulture, those are three major sericulture schools. That was that time the main exporting industry was sericulture, the silkworm. And so that and many agricultural schools was founded throughout the country to teach and also veterinary schools are founded in all that. So and after Second World War, now we had a very strong influence from the United States. And right after Second World War, educational reform by general headquarters. Japan was under control of the general headquarters by Allied power, headed by General Douglas MacArthur. And education mission by Truman administration came to Japan, led by George Stoddard, Dr. George Stoddard of Ohio State University, came to Japan in 1946. And a few months later, he submitted a report of the United States education mission to Japan, to the Supreme Commander for the Allied power. And this is a really reorganization of the Japanese education system after post-war. And the criticism against the Japanese post-war, pre-war education was specialization too early, and too narrow focus, too much specialization too early, and need to foster more humanistic attitude to the freedom of thought, so that liberal art education was mandatory, so that the new education system started in 1949. All the university has general education system for the first 1 or 2 years. This is the background. This is and this is the organization. So 6 years of elementary schools, 3 years of we call secondary schools and high schools, and 4-year universities, junior college, 2-3 years. So this is the system adopted after Second World War. So these are the agricultural university of the distribution in Japan. There are more than 50, no, it's increasing actually. There's 54 plus right now. Few agricultural university increase in the private, for the private university in the past few years. So I think it's close to 60 now. So now after 1991, now standard for the establishment of university was amended in 1991. The reason was education with the too much pressure on entrance examination. That was a big criticism. And education that fostered individuality and the value of general education was questioned, because this is a replication of the education in high school. So there's a lot of criticism. So that the general education part was incorporated to the specialized area. So, and also the change of the social circumstances, like the income has increased per capita increased, so that the motivation to work or motivation to go to university has been changing. So and also with the increase of the Japanese population, the food import was increased tremendously. And also diversification career route for agriculture major. So that makes a lot of the environment for the College of Agriculture really changed. Now, the future assignment. This is the biggest problems that we're going to face from now in the next few decades. So after the Meiji Restorations, the government, as I mentioned before, government promoted to have more children, so that the peak was 127 million per people in that 2004, and since that time the population has been decreasing. So this, like I was born in '57, so this the time that I grew up, we experienced 1 million people increase per year. Now we are going to face 1 million people decrease per year, and then this new estimate going to be like 44 million, less than half of now. So this is going to be a major issue as far as the country's strategy is concerned. What we're going to do. And another thing is, and the 2000, this is the year distribution. So like these, there were two peaks. This is the first baby boomers, second baby boomers. And in 2050 it's going to be like this. And average age going to be higher and higher. So that this is reverse triangle. So that we have a very, very big threat against the social security system. And here, what's the change of the import and the export of the meat productions. So usually, this is the yen and dollar exchange rate, and these two is 360 yen per dollar. Believe or not. So the exchange rate has, the yen has become, value of the yen increased, and they become peak about middle of the 90s. And this is a shift to the floating exchange rate in 1993. And food import, meat import started to increase at the 80s, corresponding with the increase of the exchange rate. So that more meat consumptions. So it seems to be stable right now. So the increase of the meat intake and the increase of the income is corresponding very nicely. And conversely, the agricultural population has dropped very dramatically. So there are very few farmers right now. But it's more mechanized. So it doesn't say that production is decreasing, but the number of the people engaging in agriculture has dramatically reduced. So now the education in agriculture has been how to increase the productions, but now probably it's shifting to the quality rather than quantity, or more of the environmental issues. And I didn't mention about, but the university in Japan is very weak in agricultural extension system. And now so we have to deal with so many problems, but we really do not see the goal of on the agricultural education right now. So, and lastly, probably this is going to be related with ethical issue. Sorry, this is strange. Oh, wow. 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 What I meant is, this is FL stat figure, and this is in case of Japan. No, it doesn't make any sense. But what I mean is, in Japan, for the Japan, we have the tremendous increase of the agricultural import. And the recent figure said we are importing 55 million metric ton, and export is less than 1.2 million, which means we have a tremendous inflow of agricultural product. Oppositely, United States has a tremendous export and very few import. What does it mean? And this is, in case of China, there's also a very big cap. The import has really increased very recently. So that, what that means is, free agriculture trade result in material transfer. So that if we continue, like we import 55 million metric ton, while only exporting 1 metric ton, then material, simply all the materials, basically the minerals, accumulate. So for the long term, the eutrophication takes place. And for the exporting country, they're taking up the minerals from the soil and then trying to take it back. So that is free agriculture trade is really feasible. It's a very questionable. We have to set, my concern is, do we need to set some kind of quota to maintain the environment, eutrophications. And this is another thing, this is what Dr. Shindo, a very, very famous picture, in 1960s and 20s, so that this is accumulation of the nitrogen. So that, like Japan, we start, the accumulation is very evident, and so was Korea. So that, like, this is both Japan and Korea importing quite a bit of agricultural product, so that we are putting a lot of nutrient in the soils and for the, so that this is going to be a long-term problem. Another thing is virtual water. It's like grain import. It's not just grain. About between 10 to 20% of the grain is water, so that we are importing like 55 million metric ton of agricultural product, and about more than 10% is water. So that we are agricultural import is synonymous to transferring the water. So that we are importing a lot of water from the United States. We are importing a lot of water from Denmark, Canada, so that it is sustainable. That's the big problem. And the amount of water that we import is 64 billion ton cubic meter per year. And probably you cannot see this, sorry. The water used for irrigation in paddy field is 59 billion cubic meter. So that we are importing more water than all the water used for paddy field in Japan. That tells how big amount. It is sustainable. So is current system of Japanese food and feed supply system sustainable? This is very questionable. So the conclusion is that as far as agriculture university is concerned, the future of the agriculture university should be working on the balance and sustainability. This is all over right now. But environmental concern is very severe. Also, that shouldn't we set some kind of rule for free trade is okay, but excess agricultural free trade might have a serious environmental concern. So maybe we need to discuss on that. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any question.
Thank you. It was a very good historical lesson covering not just the agriculture but also education as well. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much for very interesting lecture about this is the first time for me to learn about the development of the agricultural education in Japan. It's very interesting for me. It is very related to the development of the structure of the Japan government.
It's very fundamental.
Fundamental.
Yes.
Yes. Very strategy of the government. Could you tell me that in the really first period of the Japanese agricultural education, what area of the agriculture is very mainly conducted? I mean,
do you mean by the geographical area?
No, the growing rice or
growing
rice
apples
or animals.
Okay. Always the goal was rice for the Japanese, but like for the exploration of Hokkaido, rice was not suitable, so that they started with the wheat or those things. But the people always dreamed to cultivate rice, so they cultivated rice very secretly in the river shore. And now, these days, Hokkaido can produce very high quality rice. So the dream of the Japanese has been always having a good rice. So in case of Hokkaido, and also like in case of Tohoku area, the people, it's depend on the area. So, but mostly rice, and also like silviculture, not silviculture, sericulture, Yongsan was a major exporting materials at the beginning. So the sericulture was very active in many places. So it's depend on the area actually. Like in Tohoku area, they used cattle for mining. 南部収入だってあります。鉱山が So they used cattle for mining. So it's the environment, the geographically, the environment, like climatology is very different in each places in Japan. So that the government established so many schools to adapt the basic knowledge into to make it suitable to a particular area. So that's why they need so many schools, because the situation in each area is so different. So, but the main focus was rice cultivation, and sericulture was two big things. And other than that, it depends on the area.
I wonder, so recently I've been looking at different, some very old sakura trees and flowering trees in Japanese gardens. So the art of the Japanese garden, some of the gardens are several hundred years old.
That's right.
So the horticulturalists for fruit production, but also the gardeners for the beauty,
Yes.
how did they learn? Did they have a temple schools or horticultural schools?
Horticulture, there are several horticultural schools, like Chiba, is very famous, and there are several horticulture, but there are people who work on like tea ceremonies or the gardening is very important. But as far as government is concerned, probably increase of the food production was priority probably during that time. But these days, they have a lot of interest in gardening and sort of things. So it seems to be shifting. But until the Second World War, probably the food production was as a priority. And people always worked by themselves, but as a system, probably the priority was increase of the food production. I would think, but I'm not really.
Well, I just wonder, like cultural activities like the hanami, so looking at the sakura, this is for hundreds of years old.
Yes, yes.
This development of
There
flowering
are
plants.
always the people that really interested in those areas, and by just like hobbies or personal interest. There are always those people in all over the country. But I don't know if it's really a systematic or not. I'm not sure about that.
And so also, for example, there are many citrus varieties.
That's right.
Was this earlier in the Kyushu, or was it?
I don't know. I'm gonna check on that citrus. Like in Shikoku, a lot of citrus there. So I'm not really sure how they started.
And the fisheries, this was separate or similar?
Okay.
You mentioned fisheries.
Okay. Now, in my presentation, I didn't include fishery because in the education system, fishery, in some schools, fishery is belong to agriculture, and some school, fishery is or ocean science independent, so that it's become a little bit difficult to integrate. So, in my study or my survey, I didn't include fishery, and that has been like whaling, or that's a regionally whaling was a major things in the coast, or like fishery has been one of the major industries. That is true, but until recently, in the Meiji area, the construction of the large ship was prohibited, so that the ship was limited. The transportation with the ship is limited, because in order to control for the Tokugawa government didn't allow to construct a big ship, so that the fishery was limited to the coast. But end of period, they started Hokkaido and Kyoto had the transportation, so that the Kyoto cuisine, Kyoto food is using a lot of the kombu from Hokkaido by Kitamaisen, by ship transportations. But the ship was flat at the bottom, so that they are very not tolerant with high wave. So that they had to stop over so many times, and they cannot go away too far away from the coast. So that the ship transportation was so difficult and limited, and not distance the fishing far from the coast was limited. That was part of the strategy of the Tokugawa government, to suppress the economical growth of the small Han. They were very strategic. They wanted to be the superior, so that they didn't allow in order to move the Han, they have to have the special certificate. So and then if it's broken, they have to be very much punished. So the human movement within the country was very much restricted at that time. That was a part of the strategy of the Tokugawa government. Very, very clever in a sense, but that's really limited the economical growth of the country in one respect. But nurtured the local culture in that time. So we have a lot of local cultures, or like a local, to survive, they have to develop, they have to use their local food material to survive, so that they have a lot of local materials.
Yes, your slide, that would be interesting to see again, the 400 pounds
the maps.
Prefecture, yeah.
This one?
Yeah, it's interesting, yeah.
Well, actually, there's so many. That's why there's so many castles all over. Within even this area, we see like close to 10 castles, or in just this area. Well, one in Tsuchiura, one in Shimomura, and there's some of them just the land, but this former castle area. There are so many castles around this area, even this area.
Okay, so we have some questions. Please go ahead and speak if you have a question. Ro, John, I think you have questions. Please go ahead. Anyone as well.
Okay, I'm Yo Takahashi. Thank you for your presentation. During your presentation, I have going through your homepage, your profile. It was very interesting to find out. Since you introduced you were from Hokkaido, I was also Hokkaido as well.
Oh, are you from which part of Hokkaido are you from?
From Kitami. You are
from Kitami. Yeah, I'm from Obihiro.
Yeah, and also you exercise used to be a judo. Right?
Yes, yeah. Well, very bad though.
I was also exercise judo as well.
When I was high school.
And also you prefer music. You play violin.
Oh yeah. Wow, you did the whole survey.
Music. And also my father was a music teacher.
Yeah. Yes.
So I got that your kind of background of philosophy of research of your agricultures. I really understand what you are doing up to now. So, such a wonderful commonality I found. It was very exciting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I was curiously your ancestor, where you're from, because we are all pioneer in Hokkaido. I was curious to hear your ancestor, where you're
okay.
from.
My father was born and grew up in Tokyo. I graduate of Ueno High School.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, the principal of the high school that my father attended recommended my father to go to Hokkaido University for some reason. And he said, yes, I'm going. And my father went to Hokkaido, College of Agriculture, Hokkaido University. So my father is a graduate of Hokkaido University. And he went there. And my mother is from Sapporo, but my grandfather was engineer of the Japan National Railways. So that he was sent to Hokkaido to develop national railways in Hokkaido. So I'm third generation, but both my mother and father is really originally from Tokyo.
Oh,
Yes, so my permanent address is Sumitaku, Tokyo,
I see.
where my father grew up.
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. I really catch up why you're studying was originally came from your roots. Thank you.
Yeah, and when I was a graduate school, I went to graduate school at the University of Minnesota, and I was always telling people in my colleague that Hokkaido is United States in Japan. In one respect, this is modeled after the land grant school. So, the mentality seems to be some similarity between it's not really typical, different from the mainland, probably. Do you agree on that?
Yeah, I got the freedom and many freedom agency activities that are going on.
Yeah.
So I really catch up that why you became friend with Dario as a bioethics and so on. So it was a very good, deep presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comment.
See you in person in the future.
Sure.
Are there other questions, anyone?
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Hi, Professor Tajima. It's really an interesting presentation. I learned a lot from the Japanese side in the history of culture and the schools there. I guess there's a point of contrast when it comes to comparing some of the beginnings of Japanese agricultural school system compared to the Philippines, because here the usual, the early schools were focused more on divinity schools. In contrast to Japan, you have different focus in at the start. You have agricultural school first, and then you have the liberal education later on after that. Here, the old schools were called faculties, and the new schools were called colleges. And in the old universities, such as the University of Santo Tomas, where I studied the undergrad subjects, the old schools were called faculties, and the early faculties were the faculty of philosophy, theology, and canon law, and later on you have the faculty of civil law. After that, you have colleges now. So it's interesting that there's a difference in the beginnings of the school. Perhaps that was because of the Spanish occupation and the introduction of seminaries in the Philippines. Another interesting thing in terms of history is that after the pre-war Japanese, who mostly occupied the Philippines and in Southeast Asia, had a huge expansion in terms of economic and social reforms. But during the war in World War II, 1945, the pre-war Japanese seem to have lost everything, and some of the historical analyses that were found by historians in the Ateneo de Manila University and some historians in the University of Louisiana Thus is that the Japanese occupation underutilized the vast agricultural wealth that was found in the Philippines. But that was perhaps because the concern was not about agriculture then, but about economic expansion. And then another comment, I think, about the lacking labor force in agriculture. I think that holds also true in some countries, especially in some agricultural countries like in the Philippines, where farmers are there's still a prevailing stratification in terms of social class, where the farmers are below the social classes. And I'm glad that one of the administrations in Japan, which you have presented, abolished this social class. The order, the Bushido samurai, and then the lower class between the merchants and the farmers. So I think those are my comments. It's a very nice presentation. But I wonder if I can ask a question: how much of that abolition of social class still exists today, or are there remnants of this social stratification that is found in Japan today? Thanks for the presentation, Professor. Thank you.
Well, you have several different comments. Well, actually, I've been to the Philippines in 1970, and I've shown some kind of. I had the opportunity to visit some of the structures that during the Japanese army constructed during the Second World War, and I think it's going to be a very difficult to comment for me, but we have to accept the historical fact, and then we have to look forward to improve the situation, to not repeat what happened in the past. And about the social class, difficult to say. As far as our daily life, we do not really feel the social class that was pre-existed during the Edo period. How do you think? I'm not sure. No, since I'm from Hokkaido, that's another thing. And Hokkaido is sort of different in a sense, like a second or third children went there, or the Bushi who lost the position went to Hokkaido for explorations. So that mentality of the people who grew up in Hokkaido is very much different from people from Honshu. And in Honshu, like here too, there is a very old villages that has a very strong traditions, and the language is different, accent is different, so that probably if you visit each village, you see the you feel the historical background in Honshu. But since I grew up in Hokkaido, which is a newfound land or newly explored land, I myself didn't really feel the social lang myself. But I would think it depends on the person you talk about. Yeah, I'm not probably the right person to answer that question. I think it may have some kind of influence if you go to the rural village. Particular family has been lord, and particular family was something, so that if you go to the rural village, probably you may have some kind of things.
In this chart, were the farmers landowners or tenant farmers? Tenants.
Yes. But usually they are under the control of the landlord.
So which class had the landlord? The merchants were owning the land, or?
No, merchant was the lowest class, but they were most richest. That's why they leased a lot of money to Bushi, so that the even though the social position was lower, but they had the economical power. That was very contradicting things. And even though farmer was the second rank, they were very poor usually. But these days, the revision of the position of the farmer is ongoing. And people thought that farmer was poor and very neglected. But some people starting to say that, okay, farmer was really not really neglected because they had food, you know. So the position of the farmer during the Edo period has been revised. We were taught at school that farmer was very poor and very, how do you say, suction. They were, how do you say, taken away, how do you say, by the landlord. But some people say that Edo period, there is some kind of revision ongoing, and the farmer was not that weak. So it's the revision is undergoing, I think, on the position of farmer. But these 4 ranks was fairly strict, and the transfer of the position was not allowed. So it's inherited. And the marriage was within the same rank, usually.
So it's like a bit like the caste system.
In a sense.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah.
But caste.
Different. Because the Birakumin or Hinen is outside of these social ranks, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is another fact that there is outside here. That's especially in the west side of Japan. And this is always, it doesn't really shows up officially, but they are the people who has been neglected, called village. And there's some, that has been very much political issues, but actually they have been supported quite a bit from the government, in a sense. And in many cases, they're working at the slaughterhouse. In many cases. So that there are people who are outside of ranking. That is creating some kind of conflict once in a while. And the politician in the West Japan has to be really aware of that. But official news never really report in deep side. Since I'm in animal production, that's problem is very severe. Or I cannot really teach in the official class, but in my seminar or those who major in animal production, I always mention about the people outside the social rank. And in many cases, they are engaged in animal industry. Many cases.
Animal slaughter and labor work. Well, thank you very much. It's an excellent overview, and we can see the grounds for another presentation on social rank and history and the development of education system.
I'm not a specialist in this area, so I'm not sure I can talk about it.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really stimulating. Thank you.
Thank you very much.